Okay. Hello, folks. Welcome to another episode of Bear Does Film Club. We are taking an eclectic look at pre-MCU superhero films. And we are starting with arguably the birth of a modern superhero film, Blade,
I'd go with that.
from 1997.
Is it?
I think it was 97.
97 or 98? One of the two.
Yeah.
Let's have a look. 98. It was probably made in 97 and released in 98.
Yeah.
Yeah, Blade. As you say, probably the birth of the modern superhero film.
Yeah.
At least as far as we now think of them. I think we're having a retrospective look on the pre-MCU films because MCU has drastically changed things. Not just within Marvel itself, but it's made the other studios think outside the box. Obviously, before the Disney-Fox merger, Fox were trying to change things up as well with their X-Men and Fantastic Four franchises. And of course, famously, DC in recent years has tried to have their shared universe world as well.
What was I going to say? Oh, yeah, I think it's worth mentioning for anyone wondering, this isn't going to be an ongoing series. We're just going to delve in and out in between other things.
Yeah, so in between seasons, we're, as you probably know, season 1 of Double Features finished. We did a nice little fun thing for recasting the X-Men last week.
Yeah.
This week, it's a retrospective look at Blade, the first one. And then at some points, we'll look at the other things as well, including the Sam Raimi Spider-Man films, early X-Men films probably, and whatever else we feel like. Even things like Darkman we might do. So, sorry, James?
I think it's worth saying, I've not seen this film in quite some time before I rewatched it earlier. And
same.
It's good. It's very good.
I don't think I've seen it. We're recording this on the 15th September 2020.
I think
the year
if
of the
we're going to say...
And I saw it 12 years ago last, I think. Sorry,
I can't remember the last time I saw it.
I mean, it's a guess, but I think 12 years.
I think if we're going to say the Blade trilogy, the X-Men trilogy, and the Spider-Man trilogy...
Oh, here we go. This is going to be controversial.
I think Blade holds up better than either X-Men 1 or Spider-Man 1.
Ooh. Yeah, go on.
It is obviously going for a different market. It is a 18.
Yeah, it's a hard 18 in the UK.
Speaking of...
So it was probably a hard R in the States. Definitely wouldn't have been an NC-17.
I remember the first time I saw Blade, my parents came back from the supermarket with Blade on VHS. Like, this is a good film, but we're going to watch it first. And if we think it's okay, you can watch it.
Yeah.
So I went to a friend's house. They spent an afternoon watching Blade. And I came home and it's like, you can watch Blade. So I got to watch Blade.
I think as far as 18s go, it's certainly an 18 that's more, especially it's more gore and some bad language. So as far as like through a child's eyes, if you're already, if the gore isn't,
it's over the top.
It's over the top, but it's not so like it's not horror movie gore. It's not like Texas Chainsaw Massacre or something like that.
It's a lot of fountains of blood.
Yeah,
it's very.
Yeah. Although, I mean, obviously, you say there's not fountains of blood.
No, I was saying it is very fountains.
Oh, it is very
blood.
Fountains. Yeah. No, it's it's whole buckets of blood, but not necessarily buckets of entrails or anything. So it's quite. I think if you're a mature-ish child, then it's probably all right. How old were you? Do you reckon?
I was in high school.
Oh, so you would have been fine. Yeah. You would have
It was.
you would have said worse in school than what's said in that. So
Oh yeah.
yeah, it would have been awful.
13 maybe. 12,
Oh
13.
God, yeah, easy. I mean, it's I say it's probably an R in the States, which is usually our equivalent of a 15 in the UK. So it would have been one of those ones that was riding the line a little bit, I think, between the two.
I also remember going and picking up Blade 2 with my pocket money from Woolworths. Obviously, did not buy that myself.
Yeah. Well, there wasn't that at 15. I'm sure that one dropped to 15.
It was 18.
I'm sure it dropped to 15.
Trinity was a 15.
I think Trinity was a 12A at the cinema, wasn't it?
I can't remember. I did see Trinity at the cinema.
Yeah. But we'll get to that one in a future episode.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, Blade. I didn't see it at the cinema. I was not quite old enough to see it at the cinema. Unlike in the States, where I believe if it's an R-rated film, you can get in with an adult accompanying.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, something like that. You can't do that over here. So I would have been 15, 16 when it came out. So by the time I got to see it, it was on VHS or possibly DVD. Probably DVD. Excuse me. And oddly enough, this was a potential choice for the Teenage Kicks episode of Double Feature.
I remember you saying.
Yeah, because of the opening scene in the club. The music that was playing in the background at the time was suddenly just everybody wanted to hear it. Everyone wanted to know who the producer was on it, who the DJ was, etc., etc. And so it kind of had a little bit of a pop culture rumble, I suppose, and eventually did get released on CD. But obviously it was early days of the internet, so finding things like that as well was not easy unless you knew where you were looking to get it. And even then, it wasn't a case of necessarily downloading it. It was a case of finding someone who would sell you a physical copy of it. Because I think it didn't even necessarily have an actual distribution deal in regular shops. It was something that you had to be a real DJ to go and find. It did make a bit of a kick.
I do love a bit at the end when the big fight's about to start, and he runs and jumps into the bad guys, and then the music kicks in.
Yeah. No, it's a great film. I think the music is definitely part of it. There's a feel to that film that I think actually heavily influences the Netflix Marvel TV series, like the various Defenders shows. In a way, there's an aesthetic and ambience. There's just a feel to it that definitely the MCU films don't necessarily influence the Netflix stuff, but I think Blade certainly has something to claim there.
That very 90s Vampire Society vibe to it as well.
Yeah, I mean it's got familiar kind of through plots and through lines of things like, say, Underworld.
Yeah.
And
Night Watch for Russian.
The Night Watch,
films,
the Russian film, which was when was that?
Early 90s.
2003, something like that.
Something like that, yeah.
The first one.
At
least that's when it got it. Like Western.
That had been after 2005. I was in college when they came out.
But yeah, so it's got that kind of shadowy subculture thing going on, which obviously is not just
lots of leather.
Yeah, I mean, it's not. I mean, we were discussing it when we watched it again. That potentially Blade had a more than significant impact on the resurgence of goth as a mainstream-ish subculture. and goth music being like not just traditional rock goth, but the heavier, darker dance music now being something that goth music, goth culture embraced. And then, of course, in turn from that, emo. So,
I think Blade has similar touchstones to The Matrix.
yep. And it's a year before The Matrix.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. It's that the chosen one storyline of waiting for someone to come and save or end everyone.
Yeah.
As is the story in this one. It's the running plot on this one, quite simple. That the spirit of the blood god will take control of whoever stands in the middle of a ceremonial room and drinks the blood of the Daywalker. In this case, Blade.
He's as a superhero, he has all the strengths of a vampire's, but none of the weaknesses, apart from the bloodthirst.
Yeah, which even then is not necessarily is anywhere near as aggressive.
Well, he keeps it under control as opposed to...
He keeps it under control with a serum, but I think there's also an implication. It's nowhere near as strong as the vampire one anyway.
I even think it's one of those times where the films really influenced who Blade was in the comics going forward. I don't think Blade was the leather jacket, shade wearing character until the films did that with him. I could be wrong, but I think
he was another one of like a bit again mentioning the Defenders. I think he was another one a bit like some of them where he had a slightly more outlandish costume and look. And it was like because he was I'm sure he was in the 90s Spider-Man cartoon at some point.
Possibly because Spider-Man does become a vampire.
I think it was much later on in it when it was starting to get properly comic book level convoluted and a little confusing. But I'm sure that Blade was a guest appearance in that for a short while. But yeah, it feels like the end of the old and the beginning of the new, as far as its film style, I suppose. Because there's definitely elements of the Tim Burton Batman films in there. There's a little bit of the silliness of the Schumacher Batman films as well.
Yeah.
Obviously, I mentioned it earlier as a bit of a joke, but there's things like Darkman in there. Did you ever see that?
I've not, but I do want to watch it as part of this.
It's again a film I haven't seen in a long time, but an interesting, different take on superheroes that you wouldn't necessarily see nowadays. It would maybe make a good TV series in a way. I'm not sure another film would work, but that one was Liam Neeson playing Darkman, and things like Spawn. All those things, but it seemed to draw a line in the sand and acknowledge the past of, especially of the slightly darker superhero films, and had a level of professionalism and a level of polish. And as much as it is a little bit silly at times, it was also sort of grounded. The characters felt real in a way that the likes of Die Hard and Die Hard-esque police dramas managed to do, where it might be a truly over-the-top situation, but you've got quite grounded, normal, relatable people. And Blade is sort of relatable as much as he's weird.
A very good action film as well, as in it's non-stop. It's set piece after.
That was another thing I was thinking about. That like he is. Wesley Snipes, in a way, has, with Blade, he's probably the one that's responsible for the quality of action going forward in superhero films. Because obviously he was a big muscular, very fit man who studied martial arts, used martial arts in other films, was well known for being an action star anyway.
Some of those high kicks.
Yeah. And although what I did find interesting is when you see Blade with his shirt off towards the end of the film, he's obviously in good nick, but he hasn't felt the need to get ripped as a modern superhero would.
Yeah.
So, like, obviously, if it was Chris Evans or Hemsworth or one of the others, like, they'd probably feel the need to absolutely go to town and get as ripped as possible. I mean, in theory, Blade is of a similar level of power and strength and physique to Captain America, and yet, like, Wesley Snipes, it's not to say he's fat by any means, but he certainly isn't the, like, dehydrated like a day of a bodybuilding competition
he's
action star.
Regular in shape.
Yeah.
As opposed to Adonis.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he's achievable in shape. I think if anything, like, Blade is body positive. It's like, you've got to work hard. You've got to work your ass off, but you don't need to do stupid things. Just get to this. Be happy with this. So, like, you don't need to pull a Chris Hemsworth.
Wesley Snipes is very good.
I think he's perfect casting. I think, like, obviously there's been talks of a reboot in some form or another. I struggle to think. Haven't they already recast? Have they recast him?
Yes, and yes.
Yeah,
basically someone wanted the part and was like, "Yeah, it's me." And Disney, okay.
Oh God, I can never pronounce his name. We mentioned Defenders. He's in first season of Luke Cage, isn't he?
He was, yeah.
He was
in a fair bit lately.
He's in Cottonmouth in Luke Cage series 1. Let's have a look. It was.
I should probably be filling this dead time with a speech, but
indeed, you do that.
Yeah, Blade is good. Watch it. If you haven't watched it, definitely watch it.
Certainly.
If you're in the UK, it's the whole trilogy is on Amazon Prime.
It certainly is. It certainly is. Although you could probably buy it quite cheap as well.
Yeah,
I imagine. Mahershala Ali.
Yes,
it's that guy. Quality of actor, certainly, and I think depending on exactly how they go with,
I think you have to bring something else to the part as well. You don't want to replicate Snipes' Blade.
No, but I think he's certainly going to be someone in the same way that, I mean, we've mentioned it in previous in casting X-Men, that he's someone a bit like Chris Reeve, a bit like Hugh Jackman, and Patrick Stewart and the likes.
Yeah,
that Blade. A lot of people probably think of Blade as Wesley Snipes, and as you said, even the comic books changed because of the success of Wesley Snipes as Blade. So even the essence of Blade in the comic books is now influenced by Wesley Snipes. So yeah, recasting, it'll be interesting. Challenging, certainly challenging.
One thing I did find interesting was, I remember there was a romantic subplot through the film, but there isn't really. Or it's certainly not the kind of romance you expect from a superhero film of this era.
Yeah, where, like, they'd almost force a level of romance into it. It was less of a romance and more of a friendship of respect in a way. That he needed her and she needed him, and they both had equal things to bring to the table in different measures, obviously, but they had equal things to bring to the table. And yeah, I mean, a surprisingly balanced film, really. That the female supporting act was as important, really.
And it's a strong role.
A very strong role.
It's a heroic role, which you don't always get. Like, you look at the Spider-Man films, and Dunst's MJ basically spends most of the films being kidnapped.
Yeah, I mean, yes, you're right. It's a strong heroic role. It isn't even like a bumbling heroic role, where it's a woman out of, like, potentially out of her depth, but she somehow manages to get through it, as it would be with others. She's very much
she's a brilliant doctor.
She's a brilliant doctor, a feisty, independent woman. She has her own nice little cycle of a romance story in there as well, with her ex-boyfriend, and yeah, she's very much of the ilk, really, of a good Lois Lane. That obviously Lois Lane physically doesn't necessarily have what it takes to match Superman, but she's such a strong character that she can stand up to Clark and Superman, and this character very much does the same to Blade.
And obviously we spoil films when we're talking about them, especially decades old ones.
But it's 22 years old now.
Yeah, it doesn't end with a romantic coupling as much as Blade has a father figure in this film. Wesker. Is it Wesker? Whistler. No.
Whistler.
Pardon?
Whistler? No,
Whistler's Buffy.
Wesker, then.
Yes. Something along those lines.
Yeah. Played by Chris Christopherson. We'll go with that.
Who is his father figure, also his tech guy. And
who's obviously out of his depth, which is why the Doctor is an important addition, because as much as he is tech savvy, he's kind of using some natural intelligence to fumble through the medical science of things. She makes an excellent third member of the team.
But he unfortunately passes in the film, but it ends almost with, rather than a romantic coupling, she's the new him.
Yeah.
It's a partnership.
And yeah, I mean, it's in that way, it's actually, again, quite ahead of its time, really.
It felt refreshing.
It did. I was very surprised watching it, especially after, as I say, I think it's 12 years since I've seen it. And it, I mean, the last time I would have watched it would have been on a DVD, probably on a PlayStation 2, because that was what I used as my DVD player. And it held up remarkably well. It was very, very pleasant surprise. Like, even the CGI, there was some very, very smart use of CGI.
Oh, I absolutely loved the bat skeletons coming out of a vampire's mouths.
Yeah, that was brilliant. But even earlier on, when, like, in the opening sequence, the opening scene in the vampire club at the beginning, when Blade comes in and he's dusting everyone, it was very much a case of the director and the special effects team were smart.
Yeah.
And so you never saw it too long, so it didn't get to linger, so that the effect could be quick and effective. And so even now, it doesn't really look that dated. They've done some... And later on in the film, there's a very good combination of practical effects, like in the grossly, obscenely fat vampire. So practical effects mixed with some CGI, with dealing with things like that. It was very, very nicely done. So yeah, it was, as I say, quite a pleasant pleasant surprise, really.
You're
And
so
cinematic. I mean, the
you're
and
so
cinematic. I mean, the cinematography wise, I thought it was actually beautiful as well. Some of the shots were fantastic, really nicely done.
yeah, definitely. So your final thoughts on this and where it fits into that pre-MCU canon?
As I say, I think this, not just within Marvel films, but cinematic outings of superheroes as a whole, this very much seems like the perfect end point of the old. And I think didn't Batman and Robin came out the same year?
Batman and Robin might have been a year after. No, I think you're right. Same year.
Yeah. Whereas, like, say, Batman and Robin, bigger budget, in a way more polished.
Another film I've watched recently, actually.
But that very much feels like leftovers of the previous generation, whereas this kind of has elements of that. It acknowledges the past.
Yeah.
But it's certainly the start of something new.
I think partly because they come out in the same year. Batman and Robin feels like the end of the old, and Blade the start of the new. And if I think it's worth saying this in regards to what we might discuss in future ones of these as well. I think you can count Superman the movie to Batman and Robin as an era of superhero filmmaking, although quite a long one. Blade.
Well, I mean, it's 20 years.
Up to The Dark Knight Rises,
which came out head to head with Iron Man 2, I think.
Yeah, and there is crossover. And then Iron Man as the start of
something else.
The MCU era.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think, obviously, as you say, it's a bit of a longer period, but I think maybe that first period, it also is
less in it. At least the start of it.
Well, there's fewer big ones. I think potentially if we do this a lot more, then we might. Again, I've mentioned Darkman already. Seeing that Tank Girl and all that.
Rocketeer.
Sort of stuff. The Rocketeer. Wow. Yeah, we got to do Rocketeer. It's one of my early cinema outings. That one.
The Batman quadrilogy.
Yeah, the Batman films. There are, if you discount the ones that you readily remember, there are actually quite a lot of them that snuck through there. Like the Guyver films, if you remember them.
I know of them, but I've never seen one.
So yeah, there's all sorts of stuff. But yeah, I think Blade was the beginning of where superhero films turned from, and every now and again there was a big one, to every year there's a big one. Because obviously in '99 there wasn't, but there was a little thing called Star Wars. And there was a little thing called The Matrix. So I think they tick those boxes in a certain manner. And then obviously after that it just started with X-Men and Spider-Man and so on. So but we'll look at those another time.
I think if we do more of these, we might finalise the Blade trilogy first.
Yeah. Even if we put 2 and 3 together, because 3, to be honest, I'm not sure I want to do a whole episode on that. 2, I'd be quite happy to do a whole episode on, because it's so drastically different, but equally as good.
Well, should we let our viewers see our thoughts on the rest of Blade next week?
All right. Yeah, why not?
Yeah,
we won't be covering the TV series before any of you ask, because that's even worse than Blade 3.
I've never seen. I've seen the pilot.
Oh, it's so bad.
Yeah, it's not good.
So bad, because it's like Fat Blade. Anyway. So to finish on, should we give this a score, James? Because the other day, I found on my hard drives a proto Bear in Mind from about 2009 or something like that, where myself and James reviewed Skyfall, the James Bond film. And at the time, we called it Tufts out of 10. Tufty being James's nickname throughout school and university. So maybe for this, and then maybe we could have a pre MCU ranking list as well. If we ever get around to it, of course.
Okay,
Tufts out of 10.
Make a point not to score films anymore. But for this and for the rest of the pre-MCU films, I'm going to go... We're not going to do it out of 10.
All right.
We'll do the traditional 5 stars.
5 stars. Now remember, 3 stars has a secret code. The Cold Light of Day.
Oh.
For anyone who has not seen it, it is...
You still there?
Ever put to film. I'm still here, yeah. Yeah, you stalled for a minute.
Yeah, so did you.
All right, fair enough. I'll say it again.
Yeah.
But for those who haven't seen it, The Cold Light of Day is the most mediocre film ever filmed.
Yeah.
And myself and James saw it at the cinema. It was so mediocre. Not good, not bad.
Aggressively average.
Exactly in the middle. That in some ways it was the worst film we've ever seen. And so from now on, from then on, we've referred to film things in respective where it lies on the Cold Light of Day spectrum. Because obviously sometimes a 1-star film can be incredible because it's so bad, it's wonderful.
Yeah.
So here we go, James. On the Cold Light of Day spectrum.
4 stars.
4 stars.
Yes.
So it's warmer than the Cold Light of Day.
It is warmer than the Cold Light of Day.
Yeah, I agree with you. Completely agree with you. I had a feeling before I rewatched it, it might have been 2.5. It felt, but I think my memory has really done a disservice to it.
Yeah.
Rewatching it, I think it's a drastically underestimated film. So yeah, I'm going to go.
Will be interesting.
4 stars.
I know I love Blade 2, but my memory loves Blade 2. It's going to be interesting to see what current me actually prefers, Blade or Blade 2.
I think it'll be Blade.
I do like Del Toro, but I think there's a chance.
The thing is, it's early Western Del Toro, so it's him before he's necessarily got to the Del Toro we now know and love. So again, it's less of a sequel to Blade and more of the first part of a Del Toro comic book quadrilogy of Blade, 2 Hellboys, and Hellboy Zero, otherwise known as The Shape of Water. And so I think it might be that when we watch that and talk about it next week, that's what we'll find. But we will discuss that next week.
Yeah.
In the meantime,
don't forget to like and subscribe.
Yeah, like and subscribe. Tell us what you think about Blade and put us any suggestions for pre-MCU films that you'd like us to watch.
And if they're odd and not the most well known, the better.
Yeah, ideally something we can get hold of legally as well, because we don't really want to be, that kind of people. So that would be beneficial. But in the meantime, thank you very much. See you again, James.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.